All right, lads and lasses, and good day, mates. Welcome to another episode of the Toon podcast, the Southern Hemisphere's #1 podcast for all things Newcastle United. Today, we're going to attempt to polish the turd that was the game against Bournemouth, which finished 1-1 at the Vitality Stadium. Awful game. We'll get to the details soon. Before we do, if you're watching this, please hawk that like button on YouTube for us, please. It does really make a difference. So quick hellos first to the boys joining me for this one. It is Craig. How you going, mate?
I'm all right. I'm sweating like nothing else, just like you are, mate. This Queensland summer has been a bit of a warm one this year, hasn't it?
Oh, I know. It was 39 down here in Brizzy. 39 degrees, mate. Sweating me nuts off. And Jackie, we've just been saying you hid inside in the aircon, didn't you?
Yeah,
Where are we going?
it was ridiculous today. It was so hot. I went outside to hang some washing up, and yeah, I lasted about 30 seconds and came back into the aircon. It's stupid complaining about the heat, but it was absolutely it was one of the hottest days I think I've had here in 5 years. So it was full on.
Yeah, it was a sweaty one. It wasn't too cold yesterday either. Gotta love it though. So Newcastle against Bournemouth down at the Vitality Stadium. How Tyndall and Jones all have connections to the old stomping ground, and of course there's Ryan Fraser and Matt Ritchie who are in the squad. We'll get to them in a second. Let's get up the teams first of all for the home side. It was Bournemouth starting with Neto, Stevens, Lerma, Solanke, Ouattara, Smith, Traore, Senesi, Billing, Anthony, and Zemura. And thanks to Bournemouth for a team that is almost pronounceable for me. And moving on to the Mighty Mags, it was Nick Pope, Kieran Trippier, Fabian Shaw, Sven Botman, Dan Byrne, Sean Longstaff, Joe Willock, Joe Linton, Mickey Almiron, ASM, and Big Dog Isaac, who was pictured earlier in the day walking a big dog. Unless anyone has anything particularly to say about the Bournemouth team, let's just concentrate on the Newcastle one. The most obvious, I suppose, missing person from this one, Craig, was a certain striker.
Aye, Callum Wilson. I don't think anyone expected that, but he picked up a knocking injury, I think Eddie said. And he could be out for the next few games. Tell you what, we missed him, to be honest. I didn't think we would with Isak being the type of player he is, but he was definitely missed up at the top of the park this morning, to be honest. I don't know how long he's going to be out for, what the injury is. Probably going to be muscular on him. But yeah, it was a surprise, but Isak is more than capable of filling that role, though.
Well, you say that. Jackie, there was a bit of a discussion about who should start with here down the wing, in particular ASM or maybe it's Gordon. Eddie went with the ASM. Which is probably the more likely option. Started Isaac in the absence of Wilson. Did you feel that was going to be an okay starting lineup up top? I mean, the back pretty much hasn't changed, but up top, did you think we were going to be all right?
I thought we were going to be fine, yeah. I think lots of people have been clamouring for St. Maximin and Isak to start together for weeks. So it's quite ironic that there's a lot of calls for that, and then they play, and it's probably one of the worst performances the team's put in this season. It's just the way it goes sometimes. But I think Eddie made it clear that Maxi was going to get a run, and I think that's good. He needs to get a run in his legs, and I've been keen to see Isak for weeks. Wilson hasn't quite been at it, so it was quite an exciting lineup. I think the attack to see what could happen didn't quite turn out like that, but on paper it looked pretty good.
Yeah, once again, another Clark Kent Superman situation where you never see Wilson and Isaac together in the same team at the same time. Just keep on happening, doesn't it? Just want to touch on the subs bench as well, where Dubravka and Dummett, Gordon, Ritchie, Lewis, Fraser, Murphy, Anderson, and Lewis Miley. That is looking pretty threadbare, isn't it, Jack?
Yeah, there's like 6 left backs on there, so 2 of them which never play. But yeah, like the fact that Lewis Miley, and again, how name-checked him in his press conference, so he's obviously very highly rated. He's only 17. So the fact he was on the bench and Anderson, yeah, like you look at it and there's not much to come off there, not much experience. But yeah, it kind of is what it is at the moment with the squad situation as it is. And we know that, moving forward from next season, the bench isn't going to look that weak at all.
No, yeah, and Craig, we picked up some injuries in this game. We'll get to that in a bit, but it just makes that signing of Gordon all the more essential, before the window's shut, doesn't it?
It really does. If we hadn't have picked him up, albeit we had to pay the full 40 million up front, that would have been a very, very weak, inexperienced or aging bench, whichever way you look at it. And it'd be a case of who do you turn to and just pray for a bit of divine luck and hopefully something swings our way. Because there's not much in terms of creativity on there.
Yeah, I think at this rate, Lewis Miley is going to be bloody starting. Anyway, so moving on to the game itself, first 20 minutes. I'll come to you in a minute on this one, Jack. First 20 minutes, Bournemouth sat pretty deep, let Newcastle control most of the ball. Lots and lots of possession for Newcastle, without really doing much with it. And Jack, you said quite a lot of times, certainly on the chat anyway, that Newcastle really struggled to kind of break down these sorts of teams. However, in my opinion, it's not like they just parked the bus either. I mean, all right, there was a lot of that in the first 20. But, you got to remember, they actually drew that save from Pope. So they were pushing, even in this 20 minutes, they were pushing against us as well. And they drew that save from Pope. It was a bit of a strange save as well. It was almost like he sort of didn't quite expect what was happening, because it wasn't like a thunder bastard or anything. And he sort of flapped a little bit. But how would you, Jack, sum up that first period of time where it was all us, but like once again, we just came up against a brick wall?
Yeah, and Eddie had said that the first 20 minutes were going to be really important. He knows that ground well. He knows the fans well. These teams like Palace and Bournemouth, it's just those two teams that don't seem to be able to beat them this season. And I don't know. I can't really put my finger on what it is. Like at St James's Park, they defend deep. They both come and just park the bus. But at home, they haven't done that, and it's still been difficult for us to kind of get into a rhythm. It was a kind of scrappy start. Not much was going on. So I don't think anyone, I mean, Eddie and their manager will have been quite satisfied with the first 20 minutes. Like the teams were kind of feeling each other out. But it didn't. It became apparent quite quick it wasn't going to be kind of a cricket score, which some of us had predicted it might be. I think if we'd have got an early goal, it could have been. But yeah, there's something about Bournemouth this season that's difficult. Yeah. It's difficult, and I don't know what it is. I can't quite put my finger on it.
There's always a bogey team, isn't there? Every season, there's one particular team who just seems to have sussed you out, and they know exactly how to play against you. But having said that, we haven't lost against Bournemouth this season either. They haven't lost against us. But I mean, 2 points from possible 6 isn't particularly brilliant. Craig, they came into it around about the 20-minute mark, and it was on the 30th minute that they actually get the breakthrough and they score the first goal via Marcus Senesi. And I mean, it was really just a tap in at the end, wasn't it? So this was from a set piece, a position that you kind of expect us to be a lot better at, given that we've got absolute giants in this team. Ball's whipped in and it's flicked on by a Bournemouth player, goes all over the top of everyone and falls to the back post. And there's Senesi with probably the easiest goal in his entire life that he's going to score, completely unmarked. I've just pulled a slide up on the screen here where you can just about see Senesi at the back stick, and I've done a little call out there. You can see, I wanted to draw your attention to just that little white figure who is standing, kind of watching, doing absolutely naught. And that person was Isaac. But was that really, Craig, a poor team effort from the corner there? Should we have done better everywhere there, or are you blaming Isaac for that pretty lazy bit of marking at the back stick?
We can always do better from set pieces for defending, regardless of how well we do it. But that was lapse in concentration from pretty much the entire back line. But it was just a neat little flick on, and he was in the right place at the right time. And, he bought a ticket for the lottery and he won it. Simple as that. Isak should have been on him like shit on a stick, but he's not. That's not his natural position or anything. He's not a defender by any stretch. He should be up at the top. But yeah, it was probably a training ground goal. However, there was an element of luck to it as well, and it just caught everyone off by surprise.
Yeah, I mean, you say he's not a defender. That's absolutely true, of course. I mean, if you watch the replays, he's doing all right to start with. He's on his man. He's got him, and then he kind of just switches off and ball watches, I think, is probably what happens.
Yeah. And
then Senesi just goes, oh, cheers very much, waltzes in and just taps it. Jack, again, you've said before that Isaac isn't a defender, But I reckon it's often sometimes those outfield players. Now, Chris Wood was pretty good at defending from set pieces. Alan Shearer, if you go all the way back, was absolutely immense at the post when he was defending. So what did we need to do better on here on the set piece? Someone else maybe have been marking Senesi, or again was this just one of those mistakes?
You talked about the replay there where he was ball watching. Basically, he was in a good position, and then he thought he was looking at the ball. He thought it was going to come to him, and then Solanke, I think it was, got the flick on, by which time he'd stopped. So it was just ball watching. Like he's not a natural defender, so you just let him go. You know, it was a lapse in concentration, but the only way teams have been able to score against us recently has been by corners. West Ham did, and then the goal that Harry Kane scored for Spurs as well was from a corner. So the good news is that this can be worked on on the training ground, and it's a kind of a structural thing that we can improve on. But yeah, we face a lot of corners each game, but teams are still struggling to sort of break us down from open play, as it were. But this was just a lapse in concentration, I think. Costly one, but yeah, it was just bad defending.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, fortunately, it didn't seal all 3 points for the home team, because I think this goal really kind of gave everyone a bit of a kick up the arse that they needed. It seemed to be just one of those games that was very sloppy. Not much was happening, huffing and puffing, all fart and knee shite, as we say in Newcastle. And I think there was a bit of a kind of realization that, oh, bloody hell, we are actually playing shit here. Like, you know, they just went and scored against us. We've had the ball for 20 minutes, almost solid. Done now with it. They've had the ball for 10 minutes, scored a goal. It took us to half-time, mind you, just on the mark of half-time. Some absolutely lovely play by ASM down the wing, who, frankly, I don't think had done a great deal in this half to this point. He, first of all, manages to somehow, like, slide and stops the ball from going out of touch. And then runs down the line and squares it to Longy. Lovely square ball as well. Good vision. Longy is running onto it late, and he takes a shot. Probably should have done better, because he had a fair amount of time to pick his spot. But the keeper can only spill it. And fortunately for us, Miggy on the back stick there, he's running in, anticipating something like this. And he scores a goal. Craig, first of all, again, that was really nice play from ASM on the 2 occasions that led up to that goal.
It was. The fact that he's hunger and desire to keep that ball in on the touchline is the thing that impressed me the most. Not the pass, the long staff or anything. That hunger and desire is something we haven't seen him for a while. I'd imagine a few games back, whenever, maybe not his full fitness a few games back, but that ball would have went out for a throw-in or whatever. But yeah, he definitely earned his keep on that one. Longstaff, yes, you're absolutely right. He should have done better with the finish. He had the power, he just didn't have the accuracy in there. But again, felt to the right person at the right time. And Miggy gets his goal, which gives him 10 league goals for the season. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but is he the first person for Newcastle in the Premier League since Loic Remy, or maybe even further back, Demba Ba? If anyone can
I think Wilson might have done it, I think Wilson got double figures, but I don't know if that was in the league or overall. But he's done it once, I think, got 10 in a season for us, I think.
It's bonkers that stat when you think about it. But we can't even remember the last person who got 10 goals for in the Premier League.
And it's Miggy, well, the guy who, most of us were saying from in the summer. Jack, again, could Longy have done better with that finish? There's 2 questions here. Could he have done better? And the commentator, he was like, well, that was a tap in for Miggy. But you said on the chat, and I was pretty much thinking it myself. It wasn't exactly a tap in, was it? I've got it on screen here. He has to very carefully pick his spot. What you can't see in this screenshot here is that, as well as beating the keeper, of course, he has to beat the defenders who are coming back, and he slides in at the last second. There's 2 of them, actually. One of them gets very close to stopping it, but he manages to get it in. But yeah, so could Longy have done any better? And I mean, let's put some shine on that finish from Miggy. It was a good finish, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Longstaff, just went for power, and he drew a good save. So it was, the accuracy could have been better, but it would have been a really good goal if he managed to get it in from there. I don't understand. NUFC.com match report said that Miggy just had to put it into an unguarded net, which he quite clearly didn't.
No,
but the keeper's right there.
Yeah, David Prutton was on co-commentary, and he said that was actually, he made that look easier than what it was, because he had to readjust his feet, and he had to really get it in the corner, and it was pretty much the only place he could have put it. So I think that was that was a confident Miggy that scored that. You know, he could have took another touch, he could have dallied around with it, but he didn't. He picked his spot and he put it right in the corner. And it was a really good finish. And we really needed it because we had been really bad. Like, you know, everyone who listens to this knows that I'm a very positive supporter at the moment, but we had been appalling in this game. This was probably the worst half we'd had since we last played Bournemouth. So I was really unhappy with the way that things had been going. I think we kind of got out of jail there with that goal just before half time.
Yeah, it was the worst half until the second half, I would say. So that was half time. Basically, we go in 1-1, and I suppose that changes the conversations that Eddie Howe was planning on having. Miggy, as you say, Craig, on 10 goals for the season, clear leading scorer as well, which is quite impressive. He's having a hell of a season. Hopefully, this will be the start for another run for Miggy because he was flying before the World Cup. Should also point out that Willock went off with an injury. Just before he did that, he went down and he got some heavy strapping on his thigh. I don't know does anybody know if that was maybe a reoccurrence of something that happened previously, or is it hamstring? Does anyone heard anything or anything like that from what happened there?
Well, I had a theory that he's been playing with a knock for a while, to be honest, because he's been getting subbed a little bit earlier than normal, and he seems to be getting fatigued a lot easier in games. So I think he has been playing with a knock, and I think maybe that's just aggravated a point where he couldn't continue.
I don't think
so. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I don't think Howe said. I don't think it's apparent yet what the injury is, but yeah, it was pretty heavily strapped. So he's just played so much football. They all have, the midfielders. So it's not surprised there's some wear and tear there.
No, absolutely. And in his place came Gordon, which I was happy to see because I've been keen to watch how he gets on. I thought he had a pretty good game, actually. Craig, you think we go into half-time, having just equalised right at the death there, that Eddie would have us coming out flying out the traps in the second half. But again, it was Bournemouth who had the first real chance, and they did it pretty soon after the half started as well in the second half. The flash one right across the goal. I think our formation had remained the same, but what were you expecting to see early doors out of the second half here?
I was expecting to see 11 men in Bournemouth half in red and black jerseys, to be honest. I think they would have settled for the point from the moment that first whistle blew in the second half. But now they came out all guns blazing. They could sense that there were blood in the water for a shark, you know. They could see the 3 points was on. We were far from our best, as we've already said. We were shaky in our short passing. Our long passing was well off. And a lot of hoofballs in this game as well, which is just not like us lately at all. I don't understand that. The hoofball kind of stopped when Willock went off. Gordon came on, started getting it to the feet a bit more, and then it just rinse and repeat, and it just didn't work at all. But Bournemouth, they could smell the blood. They went for the jugular, and they were certainly the more dominant and a threatened team within that first 15, 20 minutes in the second half, if not more, to be honest.
Yeah, they are the home team after all, so you kind of expect that to come out with a bit of fire in the bellies. Jack, you just said the first half was one of the worst you've seen. Christ, this second half for me was probably the worst I think I've ever seen, and it was because of both teams really. There was lots of sloppy passing from everyone, but what really got me back up was all this diving to the floor. There was so many people just dropping to the floor under any slight touch. There was no flow as a result of that. And I've got one in my head where Longstaff went down. He was like, "Ah!" You could hear the yelp, and he's rolling around outside their box, and the referee just plays on, and he looks up and goes, "Oh, all right," and gets up and starts running around again like nothing happened. It does my tits absolutely in when I see people do that, especially in good positions. But how much of all this sloppy passing and huffing and puffing and dropping to the floor and all that was Newcastle just been a bit off the boil lately? I mean, this is our fifth game. We've only won one in the five versus Bournemouth playing better than we thought, breaking up the game constantly and preventing us from getting any kind of real rhythm going.
Yeah, I think that is to do with it. I think the Bournemouth game, this game, and then the West Ham game, most of that, we haven't been at our previous levels. We haven't been playing particularly well. So it's hard when the game gets into like a pattern of kind of fouls and you just can't get into the rhythm. Like it felt like that in the first half and that continued into the second half. It's hard to get any kind of rhythm going. And that's what happened. Like it suited Bournemouth better than us. it
do
felt.
you think that was tactical? Do you think that was tactical from Bournemouth?
Possibly, yeah. I think they had 2 or 3 people go down and took the time, but we can't complain about that. The amount we do it, like you just said. So it did feel after about 60, 65 minutes that things were turning a little bit for us, and Maxi started getting on the ball, and he looked like he might make something happen. And I started feeling confident that our quality was gonna come through, but that's not how it went in the end. And they, like you said, they had the better chances in the second half.
They did. So the second half, just basically laboured on, didn't it? It was becoming a bit of a chore to watch. I mean, you got to remember, we're all up at 3:30 in the morning here in Queensland watching this garbage. I'm lying in bed. I've got the band kicking us in the back and stuff, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? This is going to ruin my day. This, and it almost did because as much as the game just kind of dragged on, the draw was starting to look the more likely outcome. We almost nearly succumbed to a defeat. Right at the death. It was very close to the death anyway. And it came from a Solanke back heel, where he back heels the ball towards an open goal. I don't think Nick Pope was anywhere near it. Fortunately for us, thank Christ, we had Kieran Trippier right on the line to calmly, I say calmly, he might have had his heart in his mouth, but the way he handled it, he calmly took one touch to control the ball, make sure it didn't go too far back, and then took another touch to get under his spell, and then he hooked it out for a throw-in. And all the Bournemouth players are going, "Oh, referee, it's in, it's in, it's in." The referee's like looking at his watch going, no, it's not, no, it's not. Craig, this opportunity actually came from some really sloppy play from Newcastle, wasn't it? I mean, first of all, it came from Pope, who I think fell asleep halfway through kicking the ball out to Dan Burn. Dan Burn, who was facing the wrong direction, thinks he's got loads of time, hasn't got a call or anything like that. He turns around and here's a Bournemouth player bearing down on top of him, and he nicks the ball straight off his toes. And Dan Burn kind of, just for a moment there, he stands there and goes, "Oh," and just waves his hand like up the pitch to the rest of the team, like, "How are you, dickheads? Give us a shout" or something, even though it should have been Nick Pope, really. And then he tries to make amends and he can't get anywhere near it. Dan Burn's not very fast. And the ball ends up going straight across the middle, and it's almost a goal. You didn't enjoy Dan Burn's. It's hard to kind of blame Dan Burn for this, but you didn't enjoy Dan Burn's performance today, did you?
I didn't. Nah, I thought that was his worst performance. I was going to say black and white shirt, but obviously it's the Saudi kit. But it was a terrible performance. That wasn't his worst overall part of the game, because partially that wasn't his fault. I just think he just had a very sloppy, passy game. There was one point where he had a perfectly straightforward, simple forward pass, and he just puts it out to touch. And Maxi's like, "Come on, I mean, just get it on target, get it to my feet, make it simple, make it easy." And it's those little mistakes that he's making, which is going to cost him his position in the squad. Now Matty Target is coming back to full fitness. And Jack, I know you've mentioned this a few times now, that ASM will benefit from a more attacking fullback. And I just don't think they've got a great partnership going forward, them two. I think they're both unreliable on each other, and it's costing mistakes both going forward and backwards. Dan Burn, as we know, he's not a natural left back by position, but that ball that was played out, he was in a more central position rather than being pretty much on the touchline. But I don't know, he's gone off the boil, but he's not the only player that has, but he's probably went off more than anybody else. I don't know what everybody else's opinion is on that. I just think he's went downhill over the last 3, 4, maybe 5 games.
I sort of think the whole team has now, and I kind of worry that it's because of the cup game. I kind of worry that it's a bit of a distraction. I mean, it's mentioned almost every time Newcastle's mentioned now by anyone that we're in a cup final, and I feel like, and this could be completely wrong, I mean, it probably is, what do I know, but it feels like they're all they've got that in their heads, they're all kind of thinking about it, and they're not really concentrating on the here and now, and you'd think that Eddie Howe would beat that out of them, but I don't know. It just feels a little bit like it's starting to become a bit of a distraction. Perhaps we need to get that game out the way, and then we can concentrate properly on, the rest of the season. I wonder how we'll do that if we end up losing that final. Let's not get too negative. We're going to win. Obviously, we're going to win. But if we don't, I do wonder how the rest of the season is going to go. Jack, that was almost a proper sickener at the end there, almost a kick in the balls. But could you have complained if they had went and nicked it after that game?
I think they, on the balance of play, they could have won, but I don't think it was an obvious sort of that they were the better team. I just don't think either team really deserved to win, to be honest. But yeah, like just talking about Burn, that was probably his worst performance for us. So we just I think the cup final is there in the subconscious, even if they're not. Even if Eddie's saying on the training ground all the time, we're not thinking about the cup final. Like I heard a Kieran Trippier was on a podcast with Rio Ferdinand, and he was talking about the cup final. He was talking about Marcus Rashford. So I was thinking when I was listening to that, Eddie won't like that if he hears that, because he just wants us to concentrate on the next game. So it's just human nature. You can't. Everyone's excited about it. It's all over the city. It's all over everywhere. You know. So. To be not playing well and drawing games is obviously better than losing them still. So even when we've got bad performances going in, which the last 2 games have been, I think it's still good that we're not losing these games.
Yeah, and it's better to get the bad games out now before you get to that final as well, isn't it? We'd be lucky to get a full 11 out at this rate. We'll come to the injuries in a minute, but I just want to say as well, VAR was actually involved in checking that that goal line clearance, which is weird because they've got the actual goal line technology. But I think I remember recently there was an incident where the ball did go over the line, but the Hawkeye system, whatever it's called, didn't give it, and it wasn't given. So I do kind of wonder if maybe they just decided, look, we've got VAR, let's just bloody check it. It takes 5 seconds, kind of thing, you know. I was just sitting there thinking, oh god, they're going to rule it in, aren't they? VAR's going to do us over again. Like Arsenal
VAR's had an absolute shambles this weekend as well, and
again.
I wouldn't have been surprised.
Imagine Arsenal fans, right? You know, trying to win the league here, and the guy comes out and says, "I forgot to draw the line on the offside call." Well, how do you forget to draw? That's a key component of what you're doing in front of the computer, you weirdo.
You'd be proper raging when you have Arsenal lose the title now. They lost against Everton. They've dropped points against Brentford, Man City. You know, they're in a whole world of shit in the media, but you know, if they can turn that into a positive in the team and get a run on, Arsenal's arse could be starting to flap very shortly, because they've still got to play Man City as well. So that'll be interesting next few games.
They deserve to lose against Everton, I'll say that, though. They were bloody awful that game. So anyway, full time 1-1. Kind of happy that full time whistle went, because it was just killing me watching that rubbish. How many games is this now that we've unbeaten? though? I think I've written down 18, but I think I'm just guessing at that. Is it something like
17?
17. Ah, damn you, mind. 17 games. So that is still a pretty good thing. I'm trying to pull the positives out of this. And we are also unbeaten in 8 Premier League away games, which is getting close to a record. It's not quite a record yet, but it's getting there. And as you say, Jack, rotten performance, didn't lose. That's a plus. Some of the injuries, Miggy, he goes off late with what looked like a sore wrist, perhaps. I think he got trod on as he went down under challenge. And I think the guy kind of ran past him and stood on his wrist. Probably quite painful, but hopefully that's not too bad. And we need to point out as well that ASM went off with possibly a knee injury. I don't know if this has been mentioned yet at all. I haven't seen anything. It was fairly innocuous looking situation as well. He just kind of went down under a challenge. He landed all right, from what I could see, and then somehow he's broken. Jack, I mean, you've said before that he's just made of glass, isn't he?
He just gets these niggles.
But just briefly, do you think he's got a long-term future at the club? I don't want to go into this because we've talked about 1,000 times already, but like, is this just another example of why he may not have a future at this club?
He just gets niggles. He seems to get niggles in almost every game, and he ends up hobbling around and limping around. So I don't think that's going to be a main reason if we do sell him. I think it'll be the whole everything will be taken into account. But it's just when like I said before, he just started to play pretty well, and he started to. I felt like things were turning a little bit towards us, and he was the one who was. If anyone was going to make something happen, it was probably going to be Maxi. So it was just disappointing at that time for him and for us to see him go off, because he looked like he was going to complete his first 90 in God knows how long.
Yeah, true. So that's Willock, Miggy, and ASM that we need to keep our eye on for the next game. Should be an interesting start and selection that for against Liverpool. I imagine Gordon might be a bit fired up for that one. It just occurred to me, like, if Gordon starts, he'll be raring to go for that one against Liverpool at St. James's Park. Let's have a look at some of the stats. 67% possession to Newcastle to Bournemouth 33. We had a 15 shots to their 11 and 7 on target to their 5. So I suppose from the shot side of things, it's more or less the same. 6 corners to their 4, 10 fouls to their 8. I find it hard to believe we gave away more fouls than they did. But those are the stats. Only one that really matters is that it was 1-1. Big Joe picked up a 9th yellow card for a needless foul, really. I don't even know why he was doing it. Probably born out of a bit of frustration. He's now 1 away from a 2-match suspension, which is brilliant. That's just what we need. Someone else not playing. Jack, if Joe is suspended, he is not going to miss the cup final, is he? You're the expert on this particular thing.
Yeah, no, that because everyone was getting worried about that. But if he gets a red card against Liverpool, then he'll miss the cup final. If he gets injured, obviously he'll miss it. But if he gets a yellow, he'll be banned for 2 Premier League games. So he's not going to miss the final, which I think if he misses the final, that's going to be a huge blow for us.
Oh, God, absolutely. Imagine getting Bruno back and not Big Joe to compliment each other. That'll be a kick in the balls as well. Jack, I'll stick with you as well. I'll just get your assessment of the contributions of ASM and Isaac. Isaac, big dog, making his first start in about 5 months, apparently. What did you think of those 2 guys and anyone else who played, like perhaps Anderson?
ASM was pretty good. I felt like he was our biggest threat. He had a big part in the goal. It was a hard game for him because there wasn't that much space for him. But that's what's going to happen when you play against teams like this. There's not going to be much space there. Not like when you played against Man City in that game where he ran them ragged. Isak had a poor game, which was disappointing. He did start the Chef Wed game in the cup, but that game was obviously a bit of a write-off for us in the end. But he's looked good when he's come on off the bench, but he's coming off a long injury layoff. He's going to take time to get used to playing with his teammates as well. So it's nothing to be too concerned about. It's good for him to get minutes in the legs, and his understanding is going to improve the more he plays. And we're going to need him a lot between now and the end of the season because, like I said, Wilson had another one of those weird injuries that came out of nowhere and wasn't even in the squad. That's happened a few times this season. So Isak was a bit disappointing, but you're not gonna be too harsh on him for those reasons. And then Anderson got his 6 or 7 minutes. I always think he looks good. He shows for the ball and he's really interested. He wants it. I'm really keen to see how he goes in a Premier League game where he's got the whole team around him, unlike against Chef Wed where there was all those changes. Because I think he's got a lot of talent, and it'll be good to see him more we'll be seeing him more as the season goes on because, like I said, the midfield's looking a bit light. So I think we'll see him start a few games as well.
And Craig, anything to add to what Jack's just said about those guys, and maybe what did you think about Anthony Gordon as well?
Yeah, he had a few little flurries of decent passes and everything, but he did draw a stupid yellow card as well, where he just ran into the back of the Bournemouth player when there was no need to do so. And that was one of the big criticisms from the Everton fans when we asked that question a few weeks ago. Is he picks up stupid bookings? He's on 8 for the season now, so he's only 2 away from a 2-match suspension.
Oh God, another one.
So
Jeez.
yeah, he's young, he's still learning his game and everything, and hopefully that's something that can be coached in him. But that was the only downside. He didn't do anything bad, anything major or anything, but he didn't do anything superb like he did against West Ham with that through ball either. Saying that though, he did actually have that chance when the ball bobbled in front of the keeper, him and Longstaff. No idea how that didn't go in, by the way.
Good defending. It was good defending by the Bournemouth guy when Gordon pulled the trigger. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't actually see the replay of it, to be honest, but I just seen I wouldn't even get a corner for it either, I don't think, went for a goal kick. But yeah, that was his one major contribution. But yeah, that yellow card was just stupid and not needed because, again, we can't afford to lose him for a suspension or 2 in a few weeks' time.
I think with Gordon, the way he plays, like he's eager to impress, obviously, but he's just chasing all the time and he's running after people and he's really quick. So I think he just gets over enthusiastic and he just catches people, Like I don't know if it's just the way he plays. Like he's a high energy pressing kind of player. So he probably is going to pick these bookings up when he just sort of clatters into people. Whether he'll be able to be a bit more smart about when he presses and how he tackles. But at least it's not for dissent or something stupid or for diving, which you probably
yeah.
will get booked for diving for us at some point soon.
That's just around the corner.
But it's the way, it's his high energy, sort of high octane style. And it was interesting that Eddie said that he'd played Gordon in like a free role in attacking midfield. So I think Joe and Longstaff ended up sitting deep, and then Gordon had the free role. So that's another reason why they've brought him in. He's so versatile. He can play out wide, or he can play in that free role in the centre as well. So that's a big reason why we brought him in, I think. So it was pretty good from him, and I think there's a lot more to come from him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get to the man of the match in a minute, because I think I've already given it away. Gordon actually was my man of the match. But Howe said that after the game that we weren't far off our levels, I guess he means there, but something was missing. I suspect that something is a particular, I've said that wrong. I suspect that something is a certain Brazilian magician missing in the midfield. Craig, you've got a little stat regarding Bruno, haven't you?
I have indeed. So let's talk about Bruno, as the saying goes. Obviously, he's been suspended due to that red card he picked up in the League Cup semi-final. So with Bruno this season, we have played 17 games. We've won 10, drawn 7, lost none. Without Bruno, we've played 5, won none, lost 1, drawn 4.
Yeah.
So it's a hell of a stat, and he is probably by far, and that stat just shows it, our most influential player by far. It's incredible the influence he has on the players around him.
I think we did pretty well without Bruno when he was injured last time. I actually thought we did all right, but I guess that might have been in the middle of a fairly decent run for the whole team anyway. So maybe that kind of covered up the importance of Guimaraes in the middle of the pitch. All right, man, the match. Yeah, I'm going to say Gordon. I just loved his energy. I loved, he was always looking for an out. He was getting in some good positions. And yeah, he kind of pops up all over the place. So I think he's brought a certain amount of spark that the team is perhaps missing a little bit in the second half of the season. And with the likes of Bruno getting suspended and Joe 2 cards away, it's just so essential that we have someone like him to slot in. He's got lots of Premier League experience, doesn't need any warming up. He's ready to go, just needs a bit of training in the house system. Jack, who were you picking for your man of the match?
I was thinking about this earlier, and it was quite difficult. I was finding it hard to pick someone. I think probably Trippier, because of his clearance, but he was probably the one defender that plays quite well. His delivery wasn't great from corners, which is something that we keep banging on and on about, our lack of threat from corners. But yeah, I think Trippier was his usual pretty solid self, especially compared with even Botman and Shaw were a little bit shaky today, which was a bit unusual for them. So yeah, I'd say Trippier was man of the match for me.
Fair enough. Craig, I guess you're going to go for Dan Burn.
Funny enough, no. Sean Longstaff for me.
Really?
Do you think he had a good all-round game? He obviously played a part in the build-up of the goal, albeit his shot didn't go in. But if he didn't take the shot, Miggy wouldn't have got the rebound. He was fairly consistent, or more consistent than the other players around him. Big Joe was wasteful in midfield. Maxi went off too early to be given the man of the match award, I reckon. Same with Willock. But yeah, I think Longstaff deserves it just. Otherwise, it would have been Trippier, just like what Jack said.
All right. No consensus from the lads. What a surprise. What a stinker of a game. Let's have a look at the table as it stands after that. It's Arsenal top 51, played 21 games. Man City played 21 and they're on 45 points. Man United have now secured that third place, 22 games played on 43. Newcastle in fourth, played 22 games as well, but on 41 points. Then you've got Spurs in fifth on 39, Brighton on 35 in sixth, Fulham in seventh. Fulham, what a season Fulham having. Also in 35 points in seventh place, as I say. And it goes all the way down to Brentford, on 34, Chelsea on 31, and our next opponents, Liverpool, propping up the top half of the table on 29 points, having played 20 games. They do have 2 games in hand, to be fair. Jack, I'm thinking, with Arsenal and Brighton having dropped points today, or yesterday rather, and then Spurs suffered that big defeat against Leicester. My opinion is that this was another good chance to really kind of put some distance between us and fifth place in particular. and also to reclaim that third spot. Would you? I know you kind of always look on the positive side. Would you say that's necessarily? Would you go along with what I've just said there? Like it was an opportunity missed, essentially, is what I'm getting at. Or are you thinking maybe that top four is not really a realistic target for us this season anyway? Or are you still thinking top four's on as much as it is even seventh? Maybe, I don't know.
No, I think what you've said is fair. It was a big opportunity. Bournemouth are 19th in the table, and we're fourth. We could have gone third. So it was a big opportunity to put some space between us and Spurs. I still think we're in with a good shout of getting in the top four. We're going to have to obviously start turning some of these draws into wins. And Brighton have been good as well recently. But even though Brighton have been really good, they're still 6 points behind us. I know they've got a game in hand, but we've got to play them at home. So it just shows you how well we've been doing sort of earlier in the season, and how important it is that even if we're not winning games, we're not losing. We're still, as Steve Bruce said, we're still accumulating points. It's all about accumulation of points. So
what a genius.
If you look at the thing that really stands out from the league table there is as well as the few goals we've conceded, is the draws. And I think it's just important to sort of reflect that we've actually been here before already this season with these draws. So after the first game of the season against Forest, we obviously won that, and then we went 6 without a win. So, and then after that, we went and won 8 of the next 9, scoring 24 goals in the process. So at the minute, we've gone 6 games with 1 win. So we're not even on as bad a run, a slump as we were earlier in the season when we'd only won 1 game and we were so early in the season. So I think, I understand that we haven't been very good the last 2 games, whether that's a bit of a cup hangover or a cup pre-hangover from the final coming up. I don't know what it is, but we have kind of been here before already this season, so there's no reason to say that. I wouldn't be surprised if we went and won 8 of the next 9, in the league. I think we're going to start picking. I think we'll beat Liverpool. We're going to start winning games again at some point soon. But we've I think we were overperforming previously, and we're underperforming a little bit now. And I think that the reality is somewhere in the middle. So over the course of the whole season, that's probably going to even itself out. Whether that's good enough for us to get top 4 probably depends on what Spurs and Brighton and Man United do as well, as much as what we do. But yeah, I'm as you know, I'm a positive supporter. Like the whole context is still really good. Even if the short term sort of picture is a little bit concerning with especially these last 2 games. But I'm still feeling good.
Good man. Craig, do you agree with that? And also, maybe, is there a suggestion that a lot of these teams have kind of sussed out how we play? I don't know if, maybe I'm just imagining it, but I'm not seeing the same press that we were famous for before the World Cup. I haven't seen it for ages. Like where we just belt into people and close them down and force them into mistakes. I'm not seeing that. Are you seeing the same sort of thing? Do you think teams have also sussed us out, or is it just one of those bumps in the road that Jack has mentioned? I mean, it could be all 3, I suppose.
Yeah, I was just about to say there's a bit of an amalgamation of all 3 of them. I think the press will depend on the team that we're playing against. I think that is a big factor. A lot of teams, especially the lower end of the teams, they're not really going to want to play out from the back because they know that we can be quite devastating with that press. But the higher teams, more attacking teams, they're the ones that like to play out from the back. So that's where we can be more productive with our press. Liverpool will be a good example of that. They will like to play out from the back and try and play it through the middle and try and get us on the counter, whereas we'll try and get them on the press and again get them on the counter too. So it's a massive game, a bit of a revenge mission against Liverpool for what happened earlier on in the season with VAR, with that shitty away goal. The crowd will be well up for it. And just like Jack said, I think we'll win that game. Don't care if it's a 1-0 scrappy goal in the 93rd minute or the 97th minute with only 95 minutes on the clock. I would love that to happen again. That would just be poetic justice, wouldn't it?
And Craig, you've also mentioned in the chat that Liverpool play Real Madrid 3 days after the game against us. We've kind of moved on a little bit from the table, so we're talking about Liverpool now. They play Real Madrid 3 days after the game against us next weekend. And are you basically thinking that they might end up concentrating more on that Real Madrid game than they will against us? As in, so to put it another way, do you think they might field a slightly weaker team against us?
the only way they're going to qualify for the Champions League this season is if they win it, because I don't think they want to get it off league position. So they have to put a big focus on the Champions League. They might get top 8, might get top 6, but I can't see them getting top 4. There's just too much of a points gap there already. Unless you're on a massive winning streak, it's not going to happen. But then they've got to rely on everybody else losing in front of them, which those teams, you're just not going to do that, not at this stage of the season. So I do think they'll play a weakened team, albeit they've got a fair amount of injuries themselves. So it's not exactly their strongest 11 they're going to be putting out, far from it. They'll have the likes of Henderson, Milner, Trippier all playing. They're all come to the end of their careers. Even what's the one who looks like a Ninja Turtle? I forgot his name. You know which one I'm on about. Used to play for Arsenal. Can't remember his name.
Oxlade-Chamberlain.
He looks like a Ninja Turtle. He's coming at the end of his career and everything as well. So I think Lee's a bit buckled there. So it'll be a tough game. It'll never be an easy game against Liverpool, but like I say, we're out for revenge this time. And how about this for a stat? And I think this is a pretty hefty one. If we can get at least a point against Liverpool, no team can do the double against us this season, and that's never been done for us in the Premiership.
Bloody hell.
How about that for a start?
Incredible, isn't it? That's incredible. Yeah, because they're the only team who's beaten us. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, absolutely incredible. And that never occurred to me. That is something. That's a good one. That one, Craig. Well done, mate. Well done, Jack. Just very quickly, we're not going to do a preview today, but do you have it? I saw you nodding before there. Do you think Liverpool might come out slightly weaker than they might have otherwise?
I don't think it matters because they've been shit this season. Like they really have. Like Brighton hammered them and Brentford hammered them as well. So Klopp seems to be losing it a little bit. This is like unrecognizable from the team that nearly won everything last season. Nearly, but not quite won everything last season. So I really fancy us more in games against teams like this than I do against teams that are going to come and sit deep. I just think the crowd will be up for it. I think. Yeah, I'm confident we're going to score goals in this game. So I'm happier about playing Liverpool than I am about playing. If it was Palace coming again, I wouldn't be confident at all. Or Bournemouth coming to St James's Park, but with Liverpool, I really fancy us, and I think we'll get that momentum going into the cup final, which I'm trying not to think about for now.
But it could be. It's almost the perfect. Assuming we'll win, of course. It's almost the perfect game to lead us into that final. But we will talk more about that Liverpool game midweek. We have a preview coming out on Wednesday sometime, perhaps Thursday UK time. So keep your eyes on that one for when it lands in your inbox. But we will leave that there. We've managed to somehow polish this turd for about 48 minutes. That is quite the effort, lads. Well done. Champagnes all around on that one. As we always say after these kind of games, dust ourselves down and get ready for the next one, which is Liverpool, of course, at home next weekend. All right, we will leave that there. If you've enjoyed this show and you've made it this far, congratulations. Thank you very much. Please do give that thank you button, the thumbs up button, a bit of a hawk. And we will see you hopefully for the Liverpool preview. So thank you, Craig, and thank you, Jack. We will see you for the next one.
Cheers.
See you, lads.